Hi, John Hess from Filmmaker IQ. In perusing Reddit, I saw someone asking why yellow, or specifically a pale golden yellow, was so common in the graphics of older television programs. And it does seem to be true that it was everywhere, from low-rent infomercials to title cards of major television productions. Kill me! Now, when I was starting out as an intern working for a local cable company back in the early 2000s, the tail end of the standard definition days, my bosses used to joke that it was called cable yellow. You try a bunch of different colors for your overlay graphics, but you always seem to end up back at cable yellow. We never had a specific RGB value for that color. We just picked a shade or a tint that you felt looked best. So why was it so popular? Well, I think the mundane answer is that it was just the most legible color. It stands out. And that's really basically it. You would try all the other colors and they weren't nearly as easy to read. So don't watch the rest of this video and complain that I'm overthinking it, because I am. But this little navel-gazing exercise is to explore some of the color theory ideas I've been tinkering about, which might explain why yellow is so legible. Now, this is going to be my theory based on my understanding of the tech and history. Although I fancy that I have a little bit of knowledge about how this stuff is engineered, I really don't know all the technical details, but I think there's something to how I think about color that might be of value to others. The reason yellow is so dominant in text has to do with the way the color is created and how we respond to color. If legibility is our main goal, then we want the maximum contrast between what is our title and what isn't. If we're thinking in solely black and white, the maximum contrast is, well, between black and white, between completely on versus completely off. Now let's expand this concept to the additive color system and the 3 color channels of RGB, and then choose only between on and off for each individual channel. I'm going to approach this from a dark background, light colored graphic perspective, because that's the majority of the cases when you have text over video background. With all 3 channels off, we get black. With all channels on, we get white. When only one of the channels is on and the others are off, we get that primary color, red, green, and blue. But what is the contrast between black and just one primary color? Well, the primary color consists of just one channel fully turned on. If we want more power, then we need to turn on 2 of the primary channels, and that gives the 3 secondary colors of the additive system: cyan, green and blue, magenta, red and blue, and our buddy yellow, red and green. Now remember that white is the most contrast with black, all 3 colors firing versus no colors firing. So the next step down would be 2 colors firing. But here's the wrench in our system. The primary colors are not equal in perception. Our perception of green is by far the strongest, and I think that's partly due to the fact that green sits almost smack dab in the middle of the range of frequencies of our human vision. Blue is by far the weakest because it sits on the high end. Now, there are a whole host of reasons why this discrepancy, but it's beyond the scope of this video, so we'll just look at the effect. Just take a look at these 3 swatches. Each color is fully saturated, but I think most people would say that the blue feels less bright than the green or the red. And that's not just your monitor. So if we had to choose between our 3 secondary colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, and blue is the least powerful of the primary colors, then turning off the blue channel does the least to affect the perceived brightness. Now, unless you think I'm absolutely bonkers, this is actually codified mathematically in broadcast signals. Video isn't RGB, it's YUV, where Y is the black and white luminance channel and U and V are the color difference channels. Sometimes it's called CRCB. Now, this was done for 2 reasons. First, because our eyes are much more sensitive to changes in brightness, it makes sense to prioritize luminance over color, which is also why making text legible means we have to make it as high contrast, as much brightness difference as possible. By separating out luminance channel, we can take that color data and then compress it, and there won't be any noticeable differences. The second reason for using YUV is it allows black and white televisions to be able to pick up and show color TV signals by simply ignoring the color difference channels. This was key to the growth of television in the early days of the industry. But the luminance channel isn't captured by the camera, although some new designs actually do have non-color capture sites like the BMD 12K camera, but that's a whole nother story. Cameras capture light using sensors with RGB filters. That signal is put through a color matrix to translate RGB information into YUV and then translated back on the final display. In fact, that's probably where the name for the movie The Matrix came from. Anyhow, the way the luminance channel is constructed from RGB is by summing up weighted values for each color. The math, according to BT.601 linear RGB, is 0.299 red, 0.587 green, and 0.114 blue. Let's take a look back at our 3 color swatches. Now, using After Effects, I'm going to apply a channel combiner effect and select luminance to show as lightness only. That means I'm taking the luminance values and showing it in grayscale, and sure enough, we get these 3 different shades of gray. But you can see that the green swatch is the lightest shade of gray, followed by red and blue at the bottom. Now let's try this with the secondary color swatches. Now you see that yellow is the brightest of the gray boxes. Funny how magenta, which is red and blue fully saturated and added together, is still not as perceptually bright as green fully saturated. So whether you're watching color or black and white, yellow ends up being the brightest of our limited selections of colors and therefore the brightest of the non-white colors. In this color wheel graphic by Colin Shanley on medium.com, you can see the luminance values compared on a color wheel, and yellow is the brightest. But that's only because we limited our choices to fully saturated colors in 8 colors, or 12 colors in the color wheel example. Now, truthfully, fully saturated colors would not have been broadcast safe. Pure white is generally a no-no. In fact, over-the-air broadcasts had a comparatively limited color gamut and other technical issues. Red tended to bleed, and green would get obnoxious, and blue tended to get lost. Yellow, or cable yellow, as my old bosses used to say, requires you tap down the green as well to get this kind of golden hue. And that was a pretty safe broadcast color. But if it was only about maximizing luminance and you had the option of finely mixing the colors, then you could find a tint of, say, cyan that included a bit of red that would match the same luminance levels as yellow. You could also find tints of primary colors by leaving the primary color at full saturation and then equally boosting the other colors. Legibility is about contrast, but if we achieve the same contrast with other primary color combinations, then we're back to the question again, why yellow? And I think the answer has to do with psychology. Now, first is that yellow is really just white of a different color temperature. Recall what color temperature is. It is the frequencies that are emitted by a black body at a certain temperature. As the temperature increases, it follows a predictable range of colors in the color gamut chart, this little curve right here. So why yellow and not light blue? That would also be in this color temperature line. Well, that has to do with our association of yellow with warmth. And even though technically warm colors have a lower color temperature, we experience the warm glow of a fire or a candle or the hot lava, and then the coldness of a blue sky or an iceberg long before we understood the science of color temperature. And remember that color temperature is just the corresponding wavelengths emitted by a black body radiator like a star. It doesn't mean that the cold blue iceberg is that temperature. It means it reflects a similar pattern of frequencies as something glowing at a super high temperature. But if you want to think about it thermodynamically, it's absorbing the low frequencies like infrared, which is heat, which makes it feel cold, while reflecting the high frequencies alone. Anyhow, so yellow, especially this cable yellow, looks most analogous to the open flame. The color feels much more natural than an equally bright green or pink, which don't have a natural association, and it's not the cool lightness of blue. Now, looking back at the title sequences from the top shows of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you do end up seeing a lot of golden yellow graphic. But you also see a lot of white as well. In fact, I would say it's almost a toss-up between yellow and white. Still, graphic artists did incorporate this yellow into the design of the title sequences. I mean, the Cheers graphics just wouldn't work as well in any other color. It's got to have that warmth. Now, by the 90s, when you had more sophisticated television graphics capabilities, I think you start seeing more exploration to different color sets and definitely more colorful title designs. But yellow is always the safe color bet. Matt Groening has even said the reason The Simpsons are yellow instead of the Caucasian peach skin tone was because he wanted it to stand out. Quote, because when you're flicking through the channels with your remote control and a flash of yellow goes by, you'll know you're watching The Simpsons. So long live yellow. Thanks for watching this exploration into color theory and a jog down memory lane with some of these old television shows. Honestly, I whittled a few hours away just going down the rabbit hole with all these TV shows. Please like and subscribe and share this video around. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys for your support. You guys are awesome as I work through rebuilding and reorganizing my studio and getting things back together again. And consider becoming a patron as every little bit helps. Be sure to check out our merch store in the shelf below. Pick up your own official Filmmaker IQ gear. So all that's left for me to say is to go out there, make something great, and consider making the title sequence with yellow. I'm John Hess, and I'll see you at filmmakeriq.com.